I'm about to move to Aurelien. Do you identify with anything that you just heard from your colleague? How do you see this type of risk at Moody's, and how do you sort of advise your clients, or how do you apply it to your criteria in an African context?
Thank you. My experience is sovereign risk. So there are risks generally that can be mitigated through financial innovation, through sort of guarantees from NDBs, from other funding agents. But there are risks, and I think it's important, that are really relevant for the sovereign or the government or the authorities. And my experience throughout this year, where we have been rating sovereigns in Africa, is that the size of the problem, I'm sure you discussed that, 50 billion gap for infrastructure in Africa seems large, it seems big, but it's not big. 50 billion is nothing. Long-term assets in OECD is 92 trillion available, split between pension fund, insurance companies, and investment fund. 50 billion is absolutely nothing. The main, I think, obstacles for the funding to reach the projects lies within the sovereign. Institutional investors, generally, they are worried about political risk and social events. You have the credit strength of the sovereign, so it's exactly what we do: credit risk, balance sheet of the government, the debt that is on the balance sheet. And with the current situation where we had to downgrade a lot of government because of the low point in the commodity cycle, it's even more complicated for government to have a strong balance sheet to make sure that investors will have confidence that macroeconomic stability will be maintained. But I think one risk that is absolutely key is the regulatory framework and the legal environment. Here, authorities can foster an environment that will be conducive for private investment. And I will give example later, but another risk that is absolutely paramount is the foreign currency risk on restriction, possibility of soft capital controls. I give you an example. I'm the lead analyst for Nigeria. Right now there are pressure on the currency. You have a parallel market that is much higher. If you have a long-term project that sells the kilowatt hour to a certain amount of naira, everything could be put in jeopardy if you have a massive or an adjustment in the exchange rate, even over a 10-year period if you have to reach the break-even point in 10 years. The governance, absolutely key: corruption, transparency, rule of law, are really difficult sometimes to mitigate because you have jurisdictions where doing business are difficult. I would say that macroeconomic instability with high inflation, I think it's also a clear risk. Regional cooperation and integration, you have all these trade blocks, all these integration stories, but each time you have a cross-border project, it's very difficult. Lack of coordination between the authorities to promote. You will have two vehicles dealing in each country with the rules and regulation. So it's also a break to some of the infrastructure projects.
Can I just interject here, or just to that point? How would you propose that could be corrected? So you've said that there's multiple agencies interjecting and having ownership. From a sovereign ratings agency's perspective, as their risk, how would you see the opportunities or the options to de-risk that piece?
But this is my point. There are risks that are very difficult. It has to come from the government. They have to facilitate and to promote some projects that are very high on the agenda. When it's the case, the infrastructure is done very, very quickly, very efficiently, and especially when the head of states are really there to promote in each country the infrastructure project. I wanted also to say that you have an example that is clear. It's when you have some privatization process Generally, it's a good indicator for governments to create an environment where there is a new framework with the private sector. And it worked. The telecom sector is the main example. Most of the private investment in infrastructure went in the telecom because it was privatized and the rules were clear. Each time there is a subsidy or subvention, which can be totally acceptable and understandable. I'm talking about energy prices. It distorts the market, and then it can hinder the private investment if there is not the certainty that the cost applied will be, the price applied will be cost reflective of the investment. And I think these risks there are exactly the ones that are very, very difficult to mitigate.
Thank you, Aurelien.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.